Good afternoon, students. This video is a continuation of the one that we have seen yesterday on trigger, and we decided to have another video that shows how to implement or use a stored procedure in Microsoft SQL. So I'm going to walk you through the steps that we need to do a stored procedure. As we have said yesterday, a stored procedure is just like a function where you can put multiple instructions within the function, where those instructions or SQL commands will be executed as one complete function in your statements. So as we have done it in the case of a trigger, which is going to be fired by an event, like an insert, a delete, or an update event that we might have on the table. When it comes to a stored procedure, unlike that of a trigger, this is going to be executed only if the user calls the execution of the trigger. So we are going to see how to do that. So as you can see, we are on the master database. So the first thing that we have to do is switch to the database that we want to work on. And you recall that the HR database was the one that we have started working on. So we are going to execute that, and we'll see that the current active database would be HR. And if you go to the HR database, you can see that there are multiple folders. So the one that we are going to look into is, as you can see, a stored procedure is not going to be attached to any of the tables that we have. So we'll go to the programmability folder. So as you can see, there are system stored procedures, which are stored procedures that are made available by the system, but we don't have any user created stored procedure. So after we switch to the HR database, the first thing to do is to see how to create a stored procedure. So a stored procedure is going to be created by the command create stored procedure. Okay. Then, sorry, it's a stored. Okay. No, sorry, create a procedure only. Okay, create procedure. Then I will show you later on that a stored procedure can also take a parameter, or it can take a data from the calling. But now for the time being, let's just make it a procedure that is called without any parameter or without any variable. So we'll create a procedure as, and let's say what I want to do is perform a select on employee. Okay. Okay, the first one is I want to perform select everything from the employee table. This is what I wanted to do. Then let's say I want to select only the employee ID, first name. Mind you, the table format is the same as we had it earlier. We can go and see the tables here. So this is for the employee table. So if you go to the employee table, you can see that we have these columns. We have first name, last name. So I want to select first name and last name. Okay. Then let's say I want to also select the department name. And mind you, I want to, the first statement is just to list or to have a list of employees. The second statement that I want to be captured in the stored procedure is joining the two tables, which is joining the department and the employee table. So I'm going to from employee. Okay. Then inner join. I want to join the two tables with department. Okay. And the joining is going to be, if you remember, we know that on the employee table, we have a WD ID, which means the department ID of the department where the employee is working on. So the joining is going to be on the department ID, which is a primary key being equivalent with the working department ID of the employee. Okay, this is what we have. So this is the second statement. The third statement that I want to be included in my stored procedure is to display the department ID, the department name, and telephone from the department table. Okay, so as you can see, I have these three commands. So the other thing that we have to do is we have to give it a name, and let's call it my procedure. Okay, let's give it a name, my procedure in Bologna. So as you can see, this stored procedure is having three commands. Mind you, the main reason that we need a stored procedure is in case if we have multiple instructions or commands to be executed several times, instead of writing them every time, we can put them under a stored procedure, and that stored procedure, whenever we call that stored procedure, then it will execute all the three commands. In this case, in this particular case, all the three commands at once. So let's go to the programmability part. As you can see, we don't have any stored procedure. So let's create the stored procedure here. Execute. So it says one command is successfully completed. So let's refresh it. Now you can see that a stored procedure called my procedure has been created. This is all it takes. Mind you, you can have as many commands as possible, or as any complex command as you wish. As you can see, we have a select statement, but you can have a drop statement, a delete statement, an update statement, as you wish. It's up to you. It depends on for what purpose you need the stored procedure. Then once you create the stored procedure, the next thing to do is, mind you, we say the stored procedure should be executed by the user. So to execute it, either we can use execute, okay? So we can say execute, then we are going to provide the name of the procedure, okay? We can provide the name of the procedure. Now, mind you, whenever I say execute the stored procedure, it means I am calling the function to run the three commands that are included within the stored procedure. So the moment I say execute or run this command, I will expect the select statement on the employee table, a select statement on joining the tables, and another select statement on the department table to be done. So I would expect three tables to be displayed. So let's execute this one. So as you can see, the first one is a select statement on the employee table. The second statement is a join table between the employee and the department. So as you can see, I have employee ID, first name and last name. Here, you can see that. I have employee ID, first name and last name from the employee table, and department name from the department table, because as you can see, this is done by joining the two tables, the employee and the department table, and the joining happened by looking for the equality between the DID as a primary key and WDID as a foreign key. You recall that WDID is a foreign key that we have on the employee table to show for which department the employee is working for. That's why we need WDID to mean the working department ID, or the department ID where the employee is working for. And the third statement, which is executed, is a select statement on the department ID, and we wanted to see only department ID, department name, and telephone. So as you can see, we have without the location. Mind you, this means I don't want to see the location, so the three columns are displayed. So this is a very simple stored procedure. But at the same time, as I said earlier, you can also create a stored procedure which can take, a parameter. So let's have it again here. So let's call this one, let's call it our procedure envelope. Now, this procedure, I want it to take some input parameter from the user, okay? Let's simply run a select statement here, just to remove this, okay? Or let's say salaries greater than 1,000, just to clear the space, okay? So, Okay, let's go up to the new stored procedure. So we call it our procedure. So mind you, now what I want to do is in the previous stored procedure, as you have seen it, it displays every employee and it displays the department of every employee and it displays every department. But what if I want to do this for a specific employee? So I want to see detail about that specific employee, the information about the employee and the department that he's or she's working for, again, for that specific employee, but for the department, I don't need any restriction. So in that case, let's say that the parameter to be passed is the ID of the employee. So we can have an attribute. So mind you, declaring an attribute would always need an @ sign. So let's call it simply ID, and we have to specify the data type. So let's say it is character size of 5. Now, instead of simply selecting an employee, let's say we want to select only the employee ID and the salary. Okay, of which employee? Of course, what I want to do is for the employee whose ID is provided through the stored procedure. So I will say where EID equal to @ID, mind you, @ID. Mind you, @ID is the ID that we receive in the stored procedure or through the stored procedure. It's just like a parameter of a function in the management, an argument that's passed through the function. Mind you, if you have additional attributes, then you can have additional attribute here. @, we can continue. We can have more attributes. If you want to have more attributes or more parameters to be passed to the stored procedure. So again, the joining should be done for this specific employees again. So let's say that I want to restrict that only for this employee. Mind you, for the department, we cannot have this condition because employee is not an attribute of the department. So again, let's run this stored procedure. So mind you now, the difference between the earlier stored procedure, which is this one, and the one that we have in here is the second one, or the one that we have in here is taking ID as a parameter. And this ID is being used to filter the selection, okay? We are saying that the EID is the one that is passed by the user, okay? So let's execute this one, okay? So it's completed. Let's refresh to see if that stored procedure is created. So as you can see, the my procedure is the one that we had without a parameter, and the procedure with the name our procedure is the one having ID as a parameter. So now when you call this new stored procedure, okay, when you call this new procedure, which is our procedure, okay, this is the name, right? Sorry, it doesn't have E alone, Ziga, okay? So when we call this stored procedure, the new one, it expects a parameter pass mark ይጠበቅብናል, okay? That's very important. You see, if I try to run it without a parameter, it says the procedure or a function or procedure expect a parameter EID because it is based on that parameter. So let's say the parameter is employee 01 okay? Employee 01, and let's execute this, okay? Because this is a parameter that I want to pass to the procedure. So when you say execute, as you can see, the first, I don't know why this happens. Yeah, the first select statement didn't return anything. The second select statement didn't return anything, but the third one, which is select department, has returned the list of department, which means it gives you, or it gives us the ID, the name, and the telephone. Now let's see why we didn't have anything on the first two. So let's run this one, execute. Oh, so as you can see on the employee table, we don't have employee 01. We requested for employee 01. So let's change this one to employee 03. Let's go back and see the whole employee table as one. And now see what is missing. Yeah, as you can see on the employee table, we have only 4 tuples, employee 02, 03, 04, and 05. We don't have any employee 01. That's why. So let's have for employee 03, mind you, employee 03 is Wadajo with a salary of 6,600. Okay, so let's run it. Now, mind you, it is a stored procedure that will be executed, and the stored procedure has 3 different select statements. So you see, the first select statement is going to give us the employee ID and the salary from the employee table, where the employee ID is the one that we provide. The one that we provide is employee 03. So it's going to show us that employee 03 is having a salary 6,600, and that's exactly what we have requested. And the second select statement, it does the same thing, okay, for employee 03, because EID, or the ID that we supplied, is for employee 03, but it will display the employee ID, which is E03, the first name, which is Wadajo, the last name, which is Masresha, and the department name. Mind you, since it is a joint table, so it extracts some information from the department table. In this case, it is the name of the department, which means that is department, the department name is finance. And the last one is a simple select statement of all the details about the department. So all the 4 departments information is displayed in here. So what would happen if I change this to 04? Then it means it's going to execute the same stored procedure for employee 04 molecule. So as you can see, it is for employee 04. Then if you change it to employee 5, then the same thing is going to be done for employee 5. Mind you, the difference between these two, if I simply say execute my procedure, okay, the name is, okay, it doesn't have E, it has a spelling error, okay, when I type it, but it doesn't matter. So if I execute my procedure, my procedure will do the job without any selection statement, okay? So it displays for all employees, the information that we need. So this means select everything from the employee, everything from the employee in the department, and everything from the department without any restriction. And as you can see, it doesn't require any parameter here to be passed on, because my procedure is created without any parameter, but our procedure is the one that takes a parameter, to execute. So this is exactly what a stored procedure means. So as you can see, these 3 different instructions would be taken as one function, and that function can take a parameter, as in the case of our procedure, or it can be done without any parameter, as in the case of my procedure. So just to summarize what we have seen in a stored procedure is just like a function, and within a function, you can run multiple instructions or multiple commands. So in our first case, in the first stored procedure with the name my procedure, we try to include 3 select statements to be part of one function. So whenever the function is called or executed, the 3 instructions will be executed, one by one. So to call a stored procedure, what we have to use is the execute command, execute and the name of the stored procedure. Another version of a stored procedure that we have seen is a stored procedure that can take a parameter or an input from the caller. So in this case, we are going to add the variable to be, or the parameter to be passed on. In this case, it is EID, and we have the data type. Then after that, this EID as a parameter is going to be used in our instructions. In this case, we used it for the 2 select statements where the employee data is involved. So here we want to provide the ID of the employee for whom the selection we want to be done, for both the inner join and as well as the normal select statement. So when you call a procedure that is created without any parameter, you simply say execute and the name of the procedure. But if the procedure is created with a parameter, then you have to provide the parameter, the variable that you want to be taken up by the stored procedure. So this is what I have for you as an additional practical session for using a stored procedure. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you're going to use it, somehow in your project or in your organization. Thank you very much.